and this video is a response to a thread that James Griffiths, the final professor, set up, which is show 5 records from the 80s that suffer from 80s production. Quite an interesting topic because yeah, I think the 80s sort of, I'm not sure to say divide, because there's a lot of good stuff that came out in the 80s. However, I think one problem the 80s did have was that the increased use of synthesizer and could overwhelm a record and maybe influence the sound of a record more than probably it should have. So with that in mind, it's going to be a short video. I'm going to show you my 5 records that I think suffer from 80s production, and I think the first one might be quite controversial because it is quite a popular album. Heartbeat City by the Cars. This came out in 1984. It's a great pop album, but somehow the synthesizers sort of overtook the new wave element that made the car so popular. I mean, you compare this to the debut album, it's chalk and cheese. Saying that, it's sold a bucket load. I think Vinyl Victim, it's the album he's got most copies of. But I do think, in listening to it now, I think the 80s production, I mean, it's done by Mutt Lange. He was not, top-notch producer at the time, but I think it blunted the sound of the band a little bit, and I don't think it's aged that well either when listening to it. So that's my first choice. Second choice is Foreigner's Agent Provocateur. Yet again, another album. Came out in 1984. Yes, 1984 this came up. It was the successor to Foreigner 4. Great album, where the band had started incorporating synthesizers, but that helped enhance the sound. Thomas Dolby's influence there. Here, it sort of blunted their sound. It took the rough edges away. Yes, you had the ballad, and you've got That Was Yesterday. There's some some sort of rockier moments on here, but I think the synthesizer again, to me, anything that's suffered from 80s production is something that hasn't worn well when you listen to it now, and it does sound, I think, a little thin, dated, tinny, whatever you want to call it. I think the synthesizer element sort of came in, it sort of blunted the sound. I had to show this because I think this is very much a record that did, while it sold bucket loads, it was very popular both sides of the Atlantic. I think it did suffer from 80s production. Very 80s sounding. Good record, but I think the actual sound of it is overwhelmed by that production. Again, that synthesized sound, which on some tracks enhanced it. It's like Tonight, Tonight, Tonight. When I listen to it now, excuse me, it sounds so much better. It sounds at a different level. And the Brazilian, the instrumental, was a great track. But I think, again, it's an 80s record. You couldn't put it into another era, and I think it did suffer. I think it suffers overall. Again, I don't think it's aged that well. Sulaimur by Moody Blues came out 1988, and when you listen to the first track, I know you're out there somewhere. It's an 80s record. It's just 80s production that's all over this. It doesn't sound great now. It's certainly not up there with the Moody Blues' greatest records. Primarily at this time, Justin Hayward and John Lodge were just writing the songs, and You've got Tony Visconti producing it, but it's just an 80s soft rock record. It's got that 80s production on it. It doesn't smack you in the face. It's one of those records where, you know, I don't detest, but I don't like. It's sort of like, ugh. And I think it's none the better for it. So sorry, Moody Blues fans, but I do think this has suffered from poor 80s production values. And my final choice is Rush, Hold Your Fire. Rush had started using synthesizers from '77 with A Farewell to Kings, and slowly incorporated. But when Signals came in, the album Signals, Geddy Lee the influence of the synthesizer was getting more and more in, and in a sense, it started to affect the sound a little bit. It was a toss-up between this and what was the album before? And I've forgotten it. In the end, I've picked this. I've picked this. It's Power Windows. That was it. Power Windows was the previous album. Both dripping at 80s production values. Both. It takes the rough edge away from the record. So, VC, those are my 5 choices. I enjoyed James's choices, and I enjoyed Jeff Party's choices. Interesting to see what anyone else is showing as a records that have suffered from 80s production. If you stumbled across my channel for the first time, feel free to subscribe. Click thumbs up, thumbs down. Feel free to comment. I'll always come back to you. So until the next video, VC, take care of yourselves. Until the next time, keep smiling, keep spinning those records, and